DeAndre Swift is one of the biggest losers from this coaching cycle, even with the Bears hiring Ben Johnson. We'll explain why on this episode of the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast.
You are Locked On Dynasty Football, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. Here are your hosts, Marcus Mosher and Kate Madjuk.
Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. This episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use promo code LockedOnNFL, all lowercase, to win $50 instantly when you play $5. Welcome back. I am your host, Marcus Mosher. You can follow me on Twitter at Marcus_Mosher. Joining me today, as always, is Kate Madjuk. You can follow her on Twitter at Kate Madjuk. On today's show, we're taking a look at some of the biggest winners and losers from the running back, wide receiver, tight end position during this coaching cycle. And let's start with DeAndre Swift, because in theory, you would think the Bears landing the most creative offensive mind that was available in Ben Johnson would elevate his value. But that's not the case.
Yeah, I'm fairly certain that DeAndre Swift does not come out of this coaching change unscathed. Now, we know that generally speaking, Ben Johnson is going to be good with the run. I think that even if he tailors this offense to the Chicago Bears and bases it around the skill set of Caleb Williams, we have to expect that there's going to be a big component in the run game once they figure out this offensive line situation. What I do think is that DeAndre Swift coming in, he's a veteran, signed a big deal with the Bears in free agency last year. I just think Ben Johnson is going to want to get his own guy into the system. And even if he doesn't, Marcus, I think there's going to be a secondary running back here. I think that's become kind of a feature here of the Ben Johnson offense, is this dual RB 1-2 punch system that I think would benefit him to carry over from the Lions system.
The thing is, Ben Johnson had DeAndre Swift when he was with the Lions in 2022.
That's right.
He hardly played. I think he had 99 carries in 2022. It was Jamal Williams who was getting a lot of the work. Remember, that's the year that Jamal
Especially
Williams,
at the goal line.
especially at the goal line. So I just don't know how much he's going to love DeAndre Swift 3 years later. And maybe this is a case where the Bears have so many other needs and positions that they want to attack in free agency and the draft that they don't have time to go out and get DeAndre Swift's replacement, especially after paying him a good chunk of coin last offseason. But I don't think that he's going to suddenly be the Jahmyr Gibbs in this offense. I think, if anything, I think the Bears are going to go out and try to get a running back that can be an every down guy right away. And maybe Swift goes right back into that role of 4, 5, 6 touches a week and just not very fantasy relevant. So I wish this wasn't true for DeAndre Swift, but I just don't see it working out.
Yeah, I honestly kind of had forgotten about this. We already have a proof of concept here in terms of what we're, seeing and what Ben Johnson has already thought. And I do think it's interesting, especially given that was the season that, Jamal Williams was the featured goal line runner. We've seen Roschon Johnson, I think, peak out at times, but was also somewhat of a fixture around the goal line. He sniped some touchdowns of his own this year. Maybe we already know what Ben Johnson thinks of, this DeAndre Swift run game. And I don't think his cause is helped in any means, like years out from that when he's got more miles on the tires, etc.
My guess, and Kate, please tell me if you disagree. I'm going to assume the Bears are going to bring in some type of free agent. Now, this is not a particularly good free agent running back class. Najee Harris and like Rico Dowdle headline the class, but I bet you they bring in some kind of veteran. Maybe they trade for Jamal Williams, who's with the Saints right now. Maybe they just try to get somebody that can be an NFL average running back. But I do think the draft is where the Bears are going to be aggressive. Maybe not in the first round. I know there's a lot of people mocking Ashton Genty to the Bears now. That feels rich to me considering all the needs that the Bears have, especially on the offensive line and on defense. But we keep saying this is an awesome running back class. Would it surprise you at all if the Bears are a team that drafted a running back at pick, I don't know, 39 or 41? They've got 2 early second-round picks. That seems like the ideal spot for them to grab their next starting running back.
For sure. Now let's talk about the passing game, because on yesterday's show, if you missed that, go back. We talked a bit about Ben Johnson and what he's going to do for Caleb Williams. That obviously extends to the passing game. Now, which of these receivers do you think is going to benefit the most from this Ben Johnson hire? Because, we have Keenan Allen. He was on a 1-year deal. DJ Moore got his extension. Good news. Love that. We have Rome Odunze, who had, I would say, like, a good rookie season, but
Fine.
was
Yeah.
largely disappointing, I think, by most people's expectations coming out of the gate. So, like, who's the biggest winner in the passing game if you have to target one of these guys as a potential buy low in your dynasty league?
Well, honestly, I think the answer is both. I think both of them are winners. But if I'm having to go get one, I'm probably going out and getting DJ Moore just because he's significantly cheaper than what Rome is right now. I like Rome in a vacuum better than DJ Moore, but you can get DJ Moore now for, let's see, without looking, Kate, where do you think DJ Moore is being valued among receivers?
Wide receiver 24.
Wide receiver 28. So you can pay
Okay.
outside of the top 25 prices. And I just think DJ Moore's game is he can play in just about any offense. He can play in the outside. He can play in the slot. I don't know about Rome. I think Rome is more just of that vertical X receiver.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't be surprised if DJ Moore is the guy getting a lot more of the volume targets and it's Rome getting some of the high leverage targets. I think DJ Moore, who is only 27 years old right now, and we know is a really good receiver, he's probably the guy that I want to try to get as like my wide receiver 3 in my dynasty leagues.
Yeah, now I do think that the slot receiver is going to be the big winner. Now, in the 2024 season, we saw the Bears just kind of split usage across all of the wide receivers when it comes to the slot. They didn't have really a primary slot receiver. There was a big rotation between, DJ Moore, who actually played the second highest slot snap rate of his career in the slot in 2024. But he just kind of split those reps between Keenan Allen, between Rome Odunze. There was no like go-to guy. So I think whoever establishes himself as the go-to guy in the slot is going to be a big winner. Maybe that is DJ Moore. I think out of all of the receivers they have right now, he has the most versatility in terms of moving him around the formation. But I still think Cole Kmet, probably a decent winner in this overall outcome, a player that hasn't had a ton of consistency in his career, but has had plenty of spike weeks, right? Like we've seen some upside there when circumstances have been good. I think DJ Moore and Cole Kmet for me are probably the biggest winners.
And Cole Kmet is by far the cheapest, and he should be. He's the least talented of all those guys. But I do think Cole Kmet is a good football player. I don't think the yardage is going to be there every single week. And we saw this play out with Sam Laporta. Like for most of the weeks this year, like he was really hard to trust, but getting a lot of red zone opportunities. I expect the same for Cole Kmet. I'm buying just about everybody in this offense, except for DeAndre Swift, because I got to believe, Kate, they're going to have an idea of how to reshape this running back room. I thought DeAndre Swift was okay in 2024, but not good enough where I want to make him my full-time running back either.
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment. Now, when we do have an answer about the Bears running back situation, whether that comes in the draft, whether that comes at free agency, that'll have my attention in a very big way. So I'm going to be paying attention to this situation. But if I have DeAndre Swift in any of my leagues, I am trying to move on I'm probably willing to sell for pennies on the dollar at this point, because I just don't think I think if he moves on from this Bears offense or is relegated to this backseat role, he doesn't feel like the type of transcending talent that's going to make a sudden comeback at this point in his career.
I agree. Let's talk about some running backs that we think gain some value during this head coach cycle. We will get to that next. This episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. The big game is almost here, and there's no better way to make it even more exciting than with PrizePicks, the best place for daily fantasy sports. And with over 10 million members and billions in winnings awarded every single week, PrizePicks makes it fun and simple to get in on the action. Here's how it works. You either pick more or less on at least 2-player projections, and if you're right, you can win up to 1,000 times your cash. PrizePicks even has a free pick for the big game, where one of the starting quarterbacks only needs to throw for 1 yard to win. Pair that with one more correct pick, and you are cashing out. This week, I'm looking at the board, and I'm taking the more on Travis Kelce receiving yards and the more for Patrick Mahomes as passing yards. What do I love most about PrizePicks? It's fast. There's safe withdrawals. And when I win, my cash is in my account in little as 15 minutes. Check out the promo tab to tail any of my super sweet Millie winnings for the big game lineup. Go check it out today. Download the app today and use promo code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That is promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, run your game. Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast. We're discussing some of the biggest winners and losers from this head coaching cycle. Let's talk about some running backs that gain value. We were kind of down on DeAndre Swift, but let's talk about Ramondre Stevenson, who now has Mike Vrabel as his head coach and Josh McDaniels as his offensive coordinator.
Yeah, I mean, I think the proof of concept is in the pudding. On yesterday's show, and we're talking about Drake May taking a potential hit because of what's likely to be a more run-heavy overall offense, I think just translates directly into that value of Ramondre Stevenson. He got himself paid, got himself a bag this offseason, and I do think, generally speaking, like outside of these fumbling issues, which I don't know what the patience level is going to be with this new staff in terms of these fumbling issues if Ramondre Stevenson doesn't figure it out. But overall, when he's been healthy, he's been a pretty solid running back that I think can handle a decent amount of volume. I think we know Josh McDaniels and Mike Vrabel value volume in the run game, playing that type of possession football. And yeah, I think this could be, even if you're not like in on Ramondre Stevenson as like the sexiest running back, the most efficient and all of the metrics, you still have to be in on the potential for volume here when you look at what these coaches have done historically.
Yeah, Ramondre Stevenson got a contract extension last offseason. Now, he did get benched at one point during the year for fumbling, but when I look at the Patriots, they've got so many needs on offense, including offensive line and wide receiver. I just don't think they're going to have the resources to throw more picks or more money at the running back position. And I do think Ramondre Stevenson fits Josh McDaniels' offense well, because what he requires is a running back that can play on all 3 downs and that can catch the ball out of the backfield. And that's what Ramondre does really well. It's one of the reasons why they gave him that contract extension. We also saw with Josh McDaniels back in 2022, when he was the head coach of the Raiders, that's when Josh Jacobs led the NFL in rushing yards and yards from scrimmage. So he knows how to design a run game. He knows how to get his number 1 running back touches. I think Ramondre, even if it's not all that exciting, could post some high-end RB2 numbers in an offense that we think is going to be run heavy and hopefully improving with a year 2 Drake May.
Yeah, and I think when you look at the 2024 season for Ramondre Stevenson, it does feel like a pretty solid floor, right? 215 carries. He had 6 different games with 20 or more rush attempts here in the 2024 season. Only averaged 3.8 yards per carry, had 6 fumbles, right? Like, and still managed 819 rushing yards, 7 touchdowns. That feels like a pretty solid floor for a player that, like, he came off kind of a icky season, right? And we know, generally speaking, the circumstances should be favorable. Now, the advanced metrics, not overly kind to Ramondre Stevenson last year. Per PFF stable metrics, 12th percentile in terms of PFF rushing grade, 40th percentile yards after contact per attempt, 52nd percentile average in terms of yards after contact per attempt, dead last in terms of fumble rate. none of these things are particularly good, but it's the opportunity that I think we're going to look at in this offense with, like you said, more pressing needs probably elsewhere for the time being. Yeah, I could see Ramondre Stevenson being maybe not a guy that you're going to eagerly buy low, but if you need some depth at the running back position, say you have kind of a steady core of running backs, I think Ramondre Stevenson could be a really nice depth target here for some of these running teams, at least for the next year.
Yeah. It reminds me a little bit of like what Brian Robinson did this year with the Commanders, where maybe you don't feel awesome about starting him every week as your RB2, but then you look up at the end of the year and it's double-digit touchdowns and over 1,000 yards. I think Ramondre could do something very, very similar, and he is a much, much, much better receiver than what Brian Robinson is. Another running back that we think gained some value during this offseason process so far is Tank Bigsby. The Jaguars hired Liam Cohen to be their next head coach. We saw what Liam Cohen did with that running backfield in Tampa Bay. Bucky Irving, a fourth-round pick, looked absolutely fantastic. I think Bigsby is a better player. We'll see what happens with Travis Etienne, but I think Bigsby is in line for a lot more work and could be even more efficient this year.
Yeah, I mean, Bigsby really shined after what was kind of a disastrous rookie campaign. He's only 23 years old, a former third-round pick. 782 rushing yards, average 4.6 yards per carry, had 7 touchdowns on the ground. And again, that's kind of in this ancillary role where he's not the lead guy, right? 90th percentile per PFF in missed forced tackles per attempt, 94th percentile yards after contact per attempt. Those are 2 stats that we look at as generally being predictive when projecting player value from year to year. We think Liam Cohen is going to be good for the offense in general. That's probably going to mean more offensive plays run, more first downs achieved, and a more consistent pathway to the goal line, which I think Tank Bigsby has just kind of proven himself to be the better running back. I think there were plenty of times this year where Tank Bigsby just looked like a better runner than we have seen from Travis Etienne in all of his years as a running back for the Jacksonville Jaguars.
Tank Bigsby might be my favorite buy at the running back position this offseason, Kate. RB 34 right now, behind players like DeAndre Swift, Jonathan Brooks, James Conner, Jalen Warren, Aaron Jones. Like, I just think he's the better running back of the two. And I wouldn't be surprised if Jacksonville trades ETN this offseason. I think Bigsby is a perfect fit in Liam Cohen's offense. And if I don't even have to pay top 30 prices to go out and get him, sign me up all day.
Yeah, I think that risk is very, very much worth the reward. We saw, I mean, again, in this kind of backup role, we saw Tank Bigsby actually be fantasy relevant from time to time here. And I do think that maybe in a role where, this team is probably going to want to see what they have in Tank Bigsby before they decide, like, okay, we have all these offensive weapons. What do we do with Travis Etienne? I think a big part of that answer is going to be with what they have in Tank Bigsby, and can they rely on that? But this was a guy that had some flex play potential on any given week as a backup. I think if you're projecting that, if you're not all in on Travis Etienne, which I don't think you should be, I do think you should be all in on Tank Bigsby.
I'm kind of all in on Trevor Etienne, who's coming out in this year's draft.
There we go. Yeah, I had that mind slip. I don't know. Maybe the Jaguars try again.
Yeah,
Second Etienne's
don't do that. Don't do that. Really quickly before we move on, are you knocking Bucky Irving at all now that Liam Cohen is gone? And we don't know who the offensive coordinator is yet, but Bucky Irving is RB7 in Dynasty startup leagues right now, being drafted as 28th overall, so top of the 3rd round. You dropping him at all?
No.
Okay.
I'm just a believer in what he put on the tape. We've seen some really tough years for Tampa Bay in terms of like offensive line situations. Like there's been a lot of, I think, excuses that we've made for Rachaad White in terms of why he couldn't be maybe the more efficient running back that we wanted him to be. They kind of supplemented that receiving game for him because the efficiency as a runner wasn't working out. Then we saw Bucky Irving come in and do what we didn't think was possible in this Tampa Bay Bucs offense. maybe we see some changes, but again, we kind of last year downgraded everybody because, like we had another offensive coordinator switch and everybody was nervous. Like maybe this is just a good offense. Maybe Baker Mayfield is the real deal, and maybe we just need to let it ride.
Yeah,
Dave Canales, like I really thought that his departure was gonna be the end, and I kind of backed away from this offense, and I was sorry about it. So I don't want to do that again.
Yeah, I tend to agree. It feels like now that they've had a little bit of stability in the offense with the quarterback, the receivers, the offensive line, which is getting better and better every year. I tend to agree with you. Let's talk about a wide receiver for the Seahawks who didn't get a new head coach, but did get a new offensive coordinator. Let's talk about Jaxon Smith-Njigba next. This episode is brought to you by TurboTax. Taxes was waiting and wondering and worrying if you were going to get any money back, and then waiting and wondering and worrying some more. But now Taxes is matching with TurboTax expert who can do your taxes as soon as today, an expert who gives your taxes their undivided attention as they work on your return while you get real-time updates on their progress so that you can focus on your day, an expert who will find every deduction possible and file every form, every investment, everything with 100% accuracy. Also, you can get the most money back guaranteed. No waiting, no wondering, no worries. Now, this is Taxes. Get an expert now at TurboTax.com. Only available with TurboTax Live Full Service. Real-time updates only in the iOS mobile app. See guarantee details at TurboTax.com/guarantees. Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. For your second listen, check out the new Locked On NFL show. 2 shows every single day. One in the morning with Tyler Rowland, one in the afternoon with Tony Wiggins, available wherever you get your podcasts. All right, Kate, let's talk about the Seattle Seahawks because they have a new offensive coordinator. It is Klint Kubiak, who was the offensive coordinator with the Saints last year. Kubiak is going to run a similar offense to like what we saw or what we see Kyle Shanahan run with the 49ers. Who's going to benefit the most from this offensive coordinator change?
I think it's definitely got to be the receiving game. And let's go with Jaxon Smith-Njigba, who had a breakout season after most people were kind of like, all right, I'm giving up on Jaxon Smith-Njigba. Maybe that 2023 draft class wasn't as good as we thought. Jaxon Smith-Njigba actually came out and proved a lot of people wrong that they should have been a little bit more patient with the former first-round pick. 1,130 receiving yards, 6 touchdowns. And what's more impressive is that, like, he didn't even really have that breakout until, I don't know, halfway through the season.
It's true.
Weeks 8 onward, I think we really just saw the full, method and what we could do with Jaxon Smith-Njigba playing out of the slot. I think he showed some more diversity in terms of his overall skill set. I know he's primarily a slot player, but I think he can do a lot of different things. But what I love most is that he just became sort of this full-time guy that they were looking toward to move the chains. DK Metcalf, still the big play guy, but it was JSN who, by the end of the season, that was the guy they were looking at to move the chains when it came to, these every down type situations. I believe in the talent. I believe in the ability of Klint Kubiak to improve a passing game. Like, let's go.
Yeah, I've got no problems with this hiring at all. Was it Ryan Grubbs was the offensive coordinator there last year in Seattle, and I thought he did a fine job, and I think they did a better job of getting JSN more targets over the middle of the field beyond the line of scrimmage, like what we only saw last year. And I just think a more play action based offense that attacks the middle of the field is perfect. Kubiak comes from that Shanahan system. His dad was the offensive coordinator when the Broncos won the Super Bowl back in the 90s with John Elway. Gary Kubiak was the head coach when the Broncos won the Super Bowl in 2015. So you see how this lines up. It's very much a under center offense that utilizes play action, that hits guys on the move in the middle of the field. And this is where we've seen like Brandon Ayuk make a living in the middle of the field. I think JSN is a better player than Ayuk. Maybe we won't see the same volume that we saw last year for JSN, but I wouldn't be surprised at all. The efficiency is way up and we see more long touchdowns. I'm all in on buying JSN.
Yeah, I mean, let's not forget who the passing coordinator was with Brock Purdy's, true breakout season. I know 2022 end of season as a rookie closed things out on an extremely high note, but 2023 was the year where he led the NFL in terms of touchdown percentage, 7% touchdown rate, led the league with 9.6 yards per pass attempt. It was ridiculous. 113 quarterback rating, NFL passer rating. Like, there was so much to love about this 49ers passing game. Obviously, it's he's working under Kyle Shanahan, a great play caller, but I do think that lineage is going to be super beneficial to the passing game here in Seattle. I don't know if I believe that Metcalf is going to be there long term. We'll see. The rumors seem to be indicating he could be on the way out, and I think JSN could be the future of that.
This is such a bad wide receiver class, and it's not a great free agent class, especially if T. Higgins goes back, that I wouldn't be surprised if the Seahawks are getting some really strong offers from Metcalf, who might have worn out his welcome a little bit in Seattle. Maybe a team like, I don't know, the Raiders, who have Pete Carroll as their head coach, could offer an insane package, right? But I do think JSN is who they're going to build this offense around. And Kate, I'm kind of all in. I just think that JSN is an ascending player, and this offense suits him as well as any offense we've seen him play in since he was at Ohio State.
Every now and then I'll mention, my question is, does it feel like a player is outperforming what you thought their skill set was? That was not at all the case for JSN. He was doing exactly what I thought he was capable of when he was selected as a first round wide receiver. So I believe in the talent. I think we gave up on him. But when I say we, not me. I'm all in on JSN. Always have been, even despite some, disappointment. But I think JSN has been kind of the pinnacle of don't give up on receivers too quickly. And we know how quickly the landscape of a team, of an offense can change. Wheels up.
I agree. I'm all in. All right. That is it for today's show. We want to thank you for making Locked On Dynasty Football your first listen every single day. Go check out the channel on YouTube. Download the podcast wherever you get your podcasts. We are free and available on all platforms. Follow Kate on Twitter at Kate Majuk. I'm at Marcus _Mosher, and we will see you right back here tomorrow.